If Jesus walked into most churches today, what would he say? Would he congratulate us on our attendance, our programs, our polished worship? Or would he repeat the same warnings he spoke 2,000 years ago? Warnings that many people heard but few truly absorbed. We love the comforting words of Jesus. We quote the promises. We highlight the verses about peace and love. But Jesus also warned. He warned about deception. He warned about distraction. He warned about spiritual drift. And some of his strongest words were not directed at outsiders, but at believers. Today we're going to look at 7 warnings from Jesus that many Christians ignore. Not to create fear, but to awaken clarity. Because warning is not rejection. It is protection. One of the first warnings Jesus gave was about false security. He said, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven." That statement is unsettling. It reveals that verbal confession alone is not proof of transformation. It is possible to know the language of faith without living the life of faith. Jesus wasn't dismissing belief. He was exposing shallow allegiance. Calling him Lord means surrendering authority. It means obedience, not just admiration. The warning here is subtle, but serious. Don't confuse familiarity with intimacy. Knowing about Jesus is not the same as following him. And routine religion can quietly replace real relationship. Another warning Jesus repeated often was about deception. Watch out that no one deceives you. He said this when speaking about the future, about false teachers, about spiritual confusion. Deception does not usually look dangerous at first. It often sounds appealing. It affirms what we already want to believe. That's why Jesus didn't just warn about obvious evil. He warned about subtle distortion. In a world of endless voices, endless opinions, endless spiritual content, discernment becomes essential. Not everything labeled Christian reflects Christ. The warning is not to become paranoid. It is to stay grounded, to measure every teaching against his character, his words, his truth, because deception thrives where discernment is neglected. Jesus also warned about distraction. In the parable of the sower, he described seed that was choked by the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth. Notice that the seed began to grow. There was initial response, but it didn't endure. Distractions slowly suffocated devotion. You don't have to reject faith to drift from it. You simply have to let other priorities crowd it out. Career, comfort, entertainment, status. None of these are inherently evil. But when they dominate attention, spiritual vitality weakens. The warning is clear. Growth requires guarding. Faith must be nourished intentionally. Otherwise, what once felt vibrant becomes distant. Another powerful warning Jesus gave was about hypocrisy. He said, "Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees. Yeast works slowly and invisibly, but it spreads through the whole dough." Hypocrisy operates the same way. It starts small, a compromised motive, a hidden pride, a subtle judgmental attitude. But left unchecked, it expands. Jesus warned that external religiosity without inner transformation leads to spiritual blindness. The danger is not immediate collapse. It is gradual corruption. And gradual corruption is harder to detect. The call is vigilance, not toward others first, but toward your own heart. Jesus also warned about spiritual complacency. In one of his most sobering parables, he describes servants who assumed their master would delay returning. Because of the delay, they became careless. The warning is about readiness, not prediction of dates, but posture of heart. When you assume accountability is distant, urgency fades. When eternity feels abstract, priorities shift toward the temporary. Jesus consistently emphasized watchfulness, not anxiety about the future, but alertness in the present. A life aligned with His will does not panic about His return. It prepares for it. Then there is the warning about unforgiveness. Jesus told a parable about a servant forgiven an enormous debt, who then refused to forgive a much smaller one. The message was clear. Receiving mercy without extending mercy contradicts the gospel. Unforgiveness hardens the heart. It creates spiritual blockage. You cannot fully embrace grace while withholding it. The warning is not that you will never struggle with hurt. It is that clinging to bitterness poisons intimacy with God. Forgiveness is not excusing harm. It is releasing the right to revenge. And Jesus treated this seriously because unresolved resentment quietly reshapes character. Finally, Jesus warned about lukewarm faith. In his message to the church in Revelation, he said, "Because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I am about to spit you out of my mouth." Lukewarm faith is comfortable Christianity. It is belief without boldness. It is routine without passion. It is faith that fits conveniently into life without transforming it. The danger of lukewarmness is not rebellion. It is indifference. And indifference slowly erodes devotion. When faith becomes background noise instead of central conviction, spiritual temperature drops. Jesus would rather confront cold honesty than tolerate complacent apathy. If you step back and look at these warnings together, a pattern emerges. Jesus was not trying to create fear-driven followers. He was cultivating aware disciples. Every warning is an invitation to examine alignment. Are you following Him or just associating with Him? Are you discerning truth or consuming whatever feels good? Are you nurturing faith or letting distraction choke it? Are you guarding your heart or assuming you're immune? Are you living prepared or spiritually asleep? Are you extending grace or holding grudges? Are you on fire or just present? Warnings are not signs of rejection. They are signs of care. A loving guide warns about cliffs. A wise teacher warns about error. A faithful shepherd warns about wolves. Jesus warned because he knew how easily hearts drift. Spiritual decline rarely happens overnight. It happens gradually, through compromise, through neglect, through subtle shifts in priority. The challenge is that warnings are uncomfortable. They disrupt comfort. They confront assumption. They force reflection. And many people prefer affirmation over examination. But growth requires both. Encouragement builds confidence. Warning builds awareness. Together they create maturity. Imagine if believers took these warnings seriously, not defensively, but humbly. Churches would become places of authenticity rather than performance. Individuals would pursue depth rather than image. Faith would move from cultural identity to daily obedience. The difference between nominal Christianity and transformative Christianity is not knowledge. It is response. Here is the question beneath every warning. Are you listening? Not just hearing, but adjusting. Not just agreeing, but applying. Because ignoring a warning does not remove the danger. It only delays the consequence. If any of these warnings resonate, that is not a reason for despair. It is a moment for recalibration. Spiritual health is not measured by never needing correction. It is measured by how quickly you respond to it. And the fact that Jesus warned means he desires perseverance, not failure. This is not about living in constant anxiety. It is about living with intentional clarity, aware of drift, guarded against deception, passionate rather than passive, forgiving rather than hardened, devoted rather than distracted. So today, don't just admire the teachings of Jesus. Receive them. Let them refine you. Let them awaken you. Because ignoring his warnings does not protect comfort. It weakens conviction. If you're choosing to stay spiritually awake, type awake in the comments as a commitment. And share this message with someone who values truth more than ease. Because sometimes the most loving words are not the softest. They are the ones that keep you from drifting.